I got an email recently asking if I could do some more of those videos where it's just like an hour of kind of unstructured work. And I think that's a great idea. I need to get this board game done before Christmas. That's my deadline. I've been kind of hanging off. I don't know. I just haven't been doing it because there's so many exciting things for me to be doing right now, which is really like I don't know, unfortunate suffering from success scenario. There's just so many people that I've talked to and so many books I have to read and so many things I could possibly learn that it's tough to know what to actually do. And I think just finishing this project would be a great thing to just have something physically done. And yeah, I don't know. It's tough because I'm like learning so much and there's so much information and I feel like my mind is so open to information right now. I'm so willing to accept the validity of different fields and stuff that it's like there's this like big information soup, this sea of information. I'm just like desperately trying to drink it with my hands, but it's all like spilling through. And yeah, so I don't know. That sounds bad, but I'm getting a little bit of information by licking it off the hands afterwards. I just feel like I always feel like I could be doing something slightly more optimally. There could be some better use of my time, but I guess you get used to that eventually if you're just like trying to drink in information all the time. So yeah, to get this actually done and just show some loose thinking. Sorry, I keep looking over there to the side. The reason for that is like my other monitor is where I can see my face. And when I make a video, I like to see my face because it feels like I'm talking to someone rather than talking to a camera. That's a little life hack for you if you want to make your own content. But yeah. Also, I feel like I've been so... I don't know. I've been under stress lately because my jaw feels insanely tight. But at the end of each day, I just like read and meditate for like 3 hours. Otherwise, I can't go to bed. I won't be able to fall asleep. But it's okay. Things are very stable. I've figured out the patterns to look for in bipolar. I think I'll make a whole video about that. But there's so much to do with video production too, like people pointing out you should make like scripts and stuff, and now I totally agree with them. And the videos that I've scripted and like try to deliberately add some more humor into are like way higher quality, but it's like just so many things to learn and do. It's like all, oh my god. I don't know, I guess that's a feeling that I've talked to a bunch of other people like me who are kind of like ADHD, frantic, get a ton of shit done type characters. It's just something you kind of have to get used to and deal with. But the problem today on Stormy Seas, I made a lot of progress with my dad because I talked to a bunch of people who are really good at designing things, and I learned some meta design level thinking, which helped me out a bit. Still getting better at it, but yeah, it's definitely helped. I was trying to guess and check at mechanics before, and then I learned like design based on constraints, which is much better. And also... there's a book around here somewhere. Notes on the Synthesis of Form has had some pretty incredible advice in just like the first 3 paragraphs, but it's like one of those books you really have to think very difficult. You can't just like, it's not fiction. You can't sit back and absorb and enjoy. It's like every sentence you're like, oh god, I have to figure out exactly what this means or else it won't make sense. But anyway, let's get to the work. So basically, I have this combat system. I don't want to explain the entire game, but there's a combat system, and it's using a 2d6 differential roll. And what 2d6 differential roll is well, it's what it sounds like. You roll 2d6 and you subtract the higher from the lower. And this has a bunch of advantages, if you think about it, for generating a very specific kind of distribution. And I've done all the math all out with my dad, and we calculated why we would want this differential roll. It has some certain properties. So it's got like a curve that's based around a medium value. So on average, you're going to roll like a 2 or a 3. And I wish I actually had the math pulled up. That would be quite nice. But you can roll also like it. Fuck, man, I'm inarticulate right now. A lot of thoughts going through my head. So it's got a few different properties. It's got the kind of central cluster around a medium value roll, and then towards the end you get lower probability that you roll a 4 or a 5. So it's like you're rolling kind of an average thing, and then you can get these epic rolls where you do 5 damage in one turn, and it's like a 5% chance of that happening because you have to roll a 6 and a 1 or a 1 and a 6. And then you also have this really fun property where if you roll doubles, like if you roll 2 6s, they're going to subtract and be 0. So people can randomly do 0 damage. So it's kind of got this skew to extremes, which for engineering a board game is really brilliant. Sumit originally introduced this idea to me, but I thought about it a lot more, and this is just a brilliant system. It's simple, it's elegant, everyone can understand it, and the properties that emerge from these rules are just like really good for board games. So there's a 2d6 differential roll. This is how combat works. You go into combat, both people roll 2d6 diff, and then after that you're gonna have probably there's 3 scenarios. You have a tie, and then someone's a winner and someone's a loser. Someone has a higher value and someone has a lower value. And your goal is to get a higher value. And you'll pass back and forth. Let's do a little like loop. So we're both going to start off with a roll, 2d6 differential roll. And then like the aggressor, the person who challenged someone else to combat, the aggressor may mitigate roll. And what mitigation is, is basically, the word just kind of means like to counteract the effects of, I guess, to manipulate in a way. So you have this 2d6 roll, and then we're going to have a bunch of ways that you can modify that roll. And then the defender may mitigate the roll, and then we're going to, at the end of this, compare, and if both people pass, so I'm trying to articulate this. So you're going back and forth playing cards. This is a loop. So you both roll 2 dice, right? Say one person gets a 4, one person gets a 3, and then you're both going back and forth, like trying to beef up your roll / knock down the other person's roll. You can play one mitigation strategy. And the mitigation is going to be in the form of cards. So you're going to have a handful of cards that can affect the results of these dice. And the way that will work, that's what I'm trying to figure out today. I need to implement dice mitigation into this deck. And if both people pass and nobody mitigated, so like one person has a 2, one person has a 6 or a 5, I guess a 6 isn't possible, and you both, like, the aggressor's like, I'm not gonna mitigate, the defender's like, I'm not gonna mitigate, then someone loses. And that's how combat works. And so I had some loose mitigation before, if we look at the theme cards that I had generated, but this is kind of a guess. I had a preview open already. So you can see this ±1 result at the bottom of each card, and I just threw this at everything. And this means you could play this card and you could change your die roll by 1. So if you roll like a 1 and a 4, you could change the 4 to a 5, and then you would be doing 1 more damage. Now this is quite boring. It's a resource management game because you've got a whole deck full of cards, a whole deck full of theme cards, and you see they have like effects on other systems in the game. They can do random stuff. So you're kind of resource managing, like you want a certain number of cards in your hand that can be used in combat so that you can win a combat. But currently every card is just ±1. Now that's not very interesting because that means combat basically comes down to like who has more cards in their hand, which is fine if you want a very simple resource management game. And there's like a couple other economic systems we have going on in the game, and so yeah, that's a resource management game. It's very simple, but I want a little bit more oomph to it, a little bit more complexity. So I was thinking the way to do that is there's a couple ways to mitigate dice. There's like a +1 or plus or minus, I guess, /PM. Can I do PM? Or I think in types it's +.minus. Maybe there's a, you want to see a little trick? You could do let PM equals, and then just join this up, and then you could do MT PM. Or I guess you could just PM. And so there's PM1, and then we could have PM2 and up to PM3. So that would add a little bit more dynamicism. Is that a word? To, oh, that looks horrible. I guess I could, I didn't know I was trying to style this document. Now my ADHD-tism is taking over. Call this RS. Make these comments. How does that look? Oh yeah. Actually, let's make these into functions just because I'm autistic AF. Okay. Beautiful. And then I guess this is so, why am I doing this? I get distracted so easily. Yeah, this is a continual problem for me. I just rabbit hole down random things. Like I try to make something aesthetic for no reason. Who cares? I can do that later. We have to figure stuff out. We have to make stuff work here. So these are, we could have ±1, 2, or 3. And those are kind of chosen arbitrarily. I don't know, maybe 3 is too much, but that adds a level of depth to it. So certain cards are much better in combat than other cards. Then we could have a reroll. So this would, like, instead here, you would just reroll, I don't know, I guess I could put, like, to show this visually, like, where's the die? From die, let me zoom out a little bit. Where am I drawing the die? I was using context, oh God. I have no idea what any of this code does anymore. That's what you get for going on and off in a project. So it looks like the die, you can just put any symbol you want in it. So I could do like a circle or arrow dot circle. Is that a? I swear types has like a circular arrow symbol. I don't know what it's called. See, emoji symbols, general symbols. Arrow. I swear there's an arrow in a circle. Oh, arrow dot clockwise. Arrow dot clockwise, okay. Arrow dot CW. That could be an okay symbol for. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it's I don't love the end of that. Maybe there's a way to customize that, but I don't know. So that could be for reroll, whatever. I can find a better icon later. And reroll is really interesting in my opinion because, oh, did I just, where was that? Okay. I think it's pretty interesting because combined with other dice mitigation, the order matters. So these three are, what's the word in math? When you can I know it intuitively. It's like addition and multiplication have this property. God, this is embarrassing. Associative? No, I think associativity. Associative, that's like where parenthesis order doesn't matter, yeah. Commutative. How can I remember that? Commutative, yes. Communism. The order doesn't matter. Okay, the order doesn't matter, communism. All right, so these three, the order doesn't matter, they're commutative, but this one does, because if you add die, if you like modify a die roll, say this is a, I don't know, like a 2, PM, well, I have to do plus dot minus, the thing isn't in scope, and then we have a 2, plus dot minus. Why are you throwing an error? Unknown symbol modifier. Plus dot minus. Am I crazy? Oh, you can't put the $ right up against it. So yeah, you have a plus or minus 2, and that right there is like some amount of work. And same with this plus or minus 1, 2, 3. If you reroll after doing some amount of work, it's interesting because it's not commutative, right? Like if you roll, it kind of resets the dice. And like it's different if you reroll first and then add versus add and then reroll. Like there's a certain amount of work being lost. So that adds a dimension where you're like kind of waiting for someone to put in a certain amount of work on their die roll, and then you like maybe reroll. And then I had one other idea, and maybe someone in the comments will have some ideas on this too, but a swap where you could take any 2 dice from you and your opponent and swap them. And that could really cause some chaos too. And it would be good to find icons. I'm kind of thinking I would download, like this is my favorite icon website. It's really hard to search though. It would be nice to have like generative AI to describe. This is probably a thing already, honestly. Yeah, I actually don't love this because it's fuzzy search. I don't know. If you know an AI like icon finding thing, that would be great. I'm looking for like 2 arrows that like flip over each other, like a swap arrow. I don't know exactly. So yeah, dice mitigation. Now the deck is not just about dice mitigation, right? There's a bunch of considerations to make. So in like board game theory, there are multimodal cards which just do multiple things per card. And like board game theory is really cool actually. I'm a huge noob. I just read this book while I was in the psych ward. But it's very similar to software engineering because everything is trade-offs. Actually, all engineering, there's kind of different trade-offs that you make. And every mechanic has like pros and cons, and they work in different ways together. And you can get really complicated about like the meta structure of how different ideas fit together, which is, I think, what you got to do if you want to be cracked. That's what it seems like to me. You can't really guess and check. I am kind of guessing and checking here. There's definitely a much better way to do it than I am, but I'm trying to apply as I go and not just read a bunch of theory and then forget it. So anyway, multimodal cards give players more options, but they also, let's see, what is a con of a multimodal card? I guess it could be overwhelming, and for certain players, you don't want to present them with too many options. You want the options to feel like they're doing stuff. You want the players to feel like they have traction and control of the trajectory of the game. And you also, I don't think I want dice mitigation on every single card, because what I'm trying to curate here is a fun resource management game where you have a handful of these cards, and some of them do things that affect the Helen system, which is the whole objective of the game is to get the real Helen of Troy. Some of them will help you on your voyage part of the game. Some of them will help you with the economic part of the game. And some will help you with combat. And we need to kind of make it so that there are some choices to optimizing what cards you want to hold. Because you can only hold so many cards. I'm saying you can only hold 7. The reason I've made that arbitrary cutoff is because it's simple. It's related to like poker and a lot of other games, and you don't want people to just hoard like infinite cards and then have one huge turn. We want the game to be, I don't know, it's a way to balance it. So yeah, there are those different effects that these cards can have on the game, like the Helens. You can heal your hero and crew, discard your theme cards and draw a new hand of 5. I think that one's, a lot of these are old and from different iterations, and ignore all damage from one storm, so that kind of affects the voyage. Escape onto a new ship. That's nice. Voyage. So there's different cards that affect different things, right? And what I want is some of these cards to affect combat and only be able to do things in combat. And that way, like, you don't really want your hand, if it's got utility, you don't want it to be all combat, because otherwise you won't be able to do a lot of utility. So you're kind of trying to get rid of these combat cards, but you want to hold on to enough combat cards that if someone comes and attacks you and tries to take all your Helens, then you need some stuff to deal with it. So it's like a game of optimizing your hand a little bit on the side. It's like a little bit of an economic game. And that's a problem that's kind of tough to actually break down. What I'm thinking is like the deck, I keep going to the wrong file. So the deck should have some amount of each type of card that affects a different system. Helen's system, gift, economy, voyage, and then combat are the systems. And dice mitigation is interesting because there are only currently a couple of different ways you roll dice in the game. You will fight other players, that's the main one. You can destroy other palaces, but for now we're removing destroying and allying palaces. It's just all about finding the Helen, just to simplify the game. And then you can also, this is probably actually complete gibberish to someone who like doesn't know the game well. So I don't know how much you'll actually get out of this video other than like a little bit of amusement. I'm not sure. Some weird ass fucking people watch me. No offense. You're probably pretty brilliant if you are. If you've gotten to this point in the video. So there's these storms that travel around the board too, and they'll roll dice on you to do damage to you. And then there's also these little, well, there are pirates. I don't have any presents. This is an older board, but there's like a little pirate station out. What's the word for that? There's pirate terminology. I've got to have a better word than that. I played Magic the Gathering as a kid. Encampment. I don't know, like a port, but like a skullduggerous port, like kind of a nefarious one. I feel like there's a word for that. Kind of like a scummy undercity. Anyway, point is there's pirates too, and those can roll on you. So I don't want like dice mitigation to absolutely dominate the deck. I think dice mitigation specific to different categories. I'm not sure. The trade-offs on that are not clear, but I know that... Yeah. Anyway, back to this. So the deck affects different things. The theme deck, this is the main way you play cards. Action cards are like one of the main ways things happen in games. So I think there should be some percentage of each of these. And I was thinking like if 40% are combat and then maybe 30% are voyage, because that's a big part of the game, is like sailing around. And I've talked about the voyage cards before. If you're following the development of the game. Actually, I'm explaining this to someone like it's like I really want them to understand, but it's kind of weird. It's almost more of like an archive for me looking back. It's almost like this is my like video journal of doing projects. So it doesn't especially have to make sense to you at all. But if you're piecing together the different systems in this game, that is cool. Okay, and then the Helen system and the gift economy will make up some other proportion. Let's see, we've got 30% left. So 15 each. This is completely arbitrary, but so there's these different categories, and what you're really trying to go for is getting Helens. And gifts help you buy theme cards. They're the commodity, which help you buy the theme cards, and they look like this. These symbols are eventually going to be replaced. That was archaic. They'll just be heavy, medium, and light, and they fit into your boat, which I can show as well. I'm just explaining the whole game now, whatever. It makes sense to just understand things at the deepest level if you want to fully have context or if I want to fully have context. I don't know. I'm kind of problem solving myself out loud. But yeah, so these gifts will go in here. So you're managing what gifts you have, and then you're spending those gifts to buy the cards. The reason that we're not just directly buying the cards and skipping all this nonsense is because you also will have certain expert-like characters who will stay on your ship, so you need to manage space with the gifts you have. And also, eventually, in the expanded version of the game with full rules, you need to be allying palaces, and that will require having a certain amount of gifts on your ship. So it's like double-layer resource management. The gifts aren't very useful themselves, but they can buy these things, and they can do other things in the game. So, yeah. Anyway, those are the categories that can be affected. Now, having 40% combat, I think, will add interesting resource management where you're kind of getting rid of combat cards most of the time because combat is somewhat rare unless you really just want to steal stuff from other people and then you're collecting the combat cards. I don't know. This is a pretty arbitrary split, but I don't have a better way to exactly approach it. I know this project has been so immensely helpful in the development of my problem-solving ability, just talking to lots of people and their ideas about it. And I kind of dismissed all these like meta strategies at problem solving before, but there is an absolutely like a way to break down complex problems like this into smaller component parts. And it's looking at constraints is very helpful. Like what do you want this game to be and not be, and then kind of trying to narrow in on certain things. But a problem like this, like I guess looking at the constraints would be good. I would say I want a fun card management strategy. I want people to be able to play a bunch of cards in combat and have like a fun back and forth there. And I want people to have mild effects on the other systems in the game using these cards and creating like a friendly engine. So I don't honestly know the best way to converge on these different proportions of the deck. In my opinion, right now, as the board game engineer on this, the strategy is most likely going to be coming up with primitive card types for each of these categories. So like, here are 5 things that we can do to affect the economy. 5 economic effect cards you can have. Here are 5 Helen effect cards. Here are 5 voyage effect cards. Here are 5 combat effect cards. And then we'll have just scale up and down the duplicate copies of each of those things, and we'll have multiple decks in playtesting, and then see like what proportions do what. Maybe having more economic cards will lead to more theme cards being purchased, and then more economic cards again, so it'll be more of like an engine builder, where having more combat cards will lead to like bigger swings in how far someone ahead is in the game, like how much advantage someone has, which will be more social dynamic and like for people who want to just have like big crazy things happen and have a fun time. The Helen system is going to be for looking at the underside of these Helens. There's going to be a whole stack of Helens, and you're looking for the real Helen of Troy. There's a real one under here. So scaling that up will result in kind of a more informational game where you're like trying to hide the real Helen more. That is if one of the primitive cards is like look under a Helen. Another primitive could be steal a Helen from someone, swap 2 Helens, stuff like that. I don't know. That one's a little bit dicier because it controls like the entire winning mechanism, and right now it's pretty stable with like exploring these palaces and getting cards. You can explore more palaces. To have cards that directly affect the way you win might be a little risky. I'm not sure. And then let's see. We've got Voyage at 30%, and that's how you sail around. Like you're going through this, and I've described this in another video, but this is a whole mechanic to dodge storms and then get to the palaces you want. Voyage cards, I think, are going to be pretty important they're going to be a big part of the game. Like how you get to places is kind of a big chunk of the game. So it makes sense as this is 30% of the deck. And people also have the ability to kind of move storms and crash them into you, and then you'll get swept to like random places, which could disrupt your plans. So having cards that kind of mitigate that, and maybe we'll say like move 2 in any direction, so someone tries to move a storm and you play that card and you're like, and then you dodge the storm. And we could have other things that affect the movement of storms and affect the voyage. And so that overall, those are kind of the different variables I have to play with. And coming up with the card primitives I don't think will be super difficult, honestly. But there is also another constraint to this, which is thematically, there are certain things that I want to follow, certain lore points. just because there's things that happened in the history of this game, and I'm also trying to sell this to the audience of the book 1177, because my mother drew this book, and it's got the same art, and this is like a pretty big, important book in the archaeological field. This guy's a big scholar, and he has a big fan base, so I have to appeal to that because it's in that part of the world. So there's a couple lore accuracies I have to stick to, which for the purposes of this video don't really affect anything. And then there's art. So I have an art list of things you've seen on these theme cards, which I kind of have to make sure that each of these effects is representable by some of the art I have, which is a little funny. But yeah, my mom's very busy. I don't want to bother her drawing a ton more art. And so that's all right. I guess coming up with primitives for each of these, I should say combat has a few that we can do. So there's also weapons and armor, which will affect combat, like in the gift pool. I don't know if I closed that tab. Damn it. Luckily types is really fast. So there's like an axe and spears and stuff. And these will kind of add 1 to your die roll, I think, or maybe add 2. This is another variable that goes into the differential combat. And you can find these in the gift pool. And I don't know if the bow will actually do anything. Not sure about that. But there could be a combat card, like destroy enemy armor / weapon. That's a combat card, because those are going to be a big part. Then there's all the mitigation stuff. So there's all this stuff, which I think could be baked into cards. And this might handle combat exhaustively, honestly. Why can't I indent? You kidding me? Indent. Okay. You don't want to be indented, do you? Do I have like my bindings messed up? No, I just can't indent hashtags. Weird. Oh, the typed formatter. Yeah. It thinks maybe if I okay. So we got those things going, and I can loosely tie these to combat verbs, and then I have some combat kind of themed art if I go to the assets. So let's see, themes, I guess. Yeah, so disarm, like there's one for like you just can't use your weapon for the rest of combat, and then let's see, what other art do I have that I could use? First strike. That art is a little weird. Oh well. No offense, mother. It looks like cheap shot. Yeah, that's one that could be mapped onto something. I don't know. I could just use this art and call it something else. Just like a generic strike, and then we've got a disarm, and then we've got a sunder. I don't know, that breaks a weapon. That's reasonable. Okay, so there's that. That's kind of combat stuff. Dice mitigation as it applies to combat. Can I not indent? What if this is like this? No. Types formatter does not love indentation. All right. So the voyage is interesting. What primitives can I do there? Like instant out of order movement. Cancel effects of storm. Move storm out of order. Let's see. Yeah, like instant out of order movement could be teleportation out of the way of something. Can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Gift economy, just draw free gifts just randomly, or like trade in gifts on ship for new gifts. I'm honestly, these are 15%. I can't think of a ton more primitives. And then this is like look at Helen secretly, or look at, because Helens are going to travel in stacks now. Look at a stack of Helens. It's kind of an information game thing, and then like steal up to N Helens from another player. But that's actually chosen at random, so we have like a go fish kind of fun thing going on. What happened to all the combat stuff? Oh, here we go. I could just say plus or minus 1 to 3 to condense that. And then a reroll, destroy, and then maybe just we want like a stun armor. And then there might be, honestly, we could cut down these proportions, but we might have like a miscellaneous category, like cancel any card, which is an effect in Magic, which is like the most powerful effect in the game, possibly. And then there's also card flow, like drawing cards. This is another tool you can potentially add to make the deck cycle through faster. Yeah. So those are the primitives for the most part. I'm not sure. Maybe looking through would give me a clue at some other primitives. That's mitigation. Choose direction of the current, wind table, then move all storms. So that's just moving storms. Recover an already used voyage card. That's a voyage effect. Player to discard an expert or lose 3 crew. That's kind of a voyage card as well. Leviathan is also a voyage card. Voyage. Oh, I guess that is one more category. Like, you probably condense this into some kind of meta category of like currency mitigation. Draw free gifts, heal, ship, heal, hero. And I think trade in gifts for ship for new gifts is just the same thing as draw free gifts with extra steps. They fit into the same overall category. Yeah, and I guess technically this is currency mitigation as well. Like card flow is technically the same thing as that. And then cancel any voyage, cancel any card. That is kind of miscellaneous. I'm not exactly sure what that falls under, because it could be used in combat, it could be used in voyage. It's a very powerful card. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. That looks like it kind of covers everything though. So yeah, I think that's good. Let's see. This video is about 40 minutes long. It gets really annoying to handle in my editing software at around an hour. Well, I could chunk it up, I guess. It's not the worst. But yeah, I think the rest of this video will be kind of boring. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be super interesting. It was just like my thought process. But the next part is kind of gonna be grueling, and I think I would rather do it not talking out loud. So we have this master sheet, and I'm just gonna have to compile a bunch of like rules text together. And yeah, hopefully you got something out of me just thinking my way through this. I know it maybe looks like I didn't do a whole lot here yet, but I technically didn't, so you're right. But planning is very important. Very important. You just can't fully plan. There's diminishing returns. But yeah, I'll catch you next time. Hopefully you enjoyed this longer form content. I have to go talk to some guy about something. I don't know.